Hello everyone, this is Silverbolt Games, and in this video we are going to learn how to create a top-down turret in Unity that has a max firing range and looks at the target when target is in range and fires every few seconds. So this is what we're trying to create. Let's get into it. Alright, first of all open up a new 2D project, and I have some sprites here, the link to all of which will be in the description. So first of all, I'm going to drag and drop my turret sprite on the scene view. I'm going to reset the transform and rename it to turret. I will also drag and drop the blank white sprite I have and rename it to player. Now while I have player selected, in the inspector, click layer, then add layer. And here let's add a layer called player. Now click the player again and select the player layer. Alright, now click the turret and let's add a new C# script. Let's call it turret AI. And I will open it up in Visual Studio. So first of all, we need a max firing range. So I'm gonna do serialize field, private float, scan radius. I will set the default to 3. Now we need to visualize this, so for this we need to do private void onDraw gizmo selected. And in here we need to do gizmos.draw wire sphere. Transform.position and scan radius. So this draws a wire sphere in the scene view, which looks like a circle in 2D. And the sphere takes the transform.position as the center and scan radius as the radius. Let's go back to Unity and test this out. Alright, so it works. Let's go back to our code. Now we're gonna find out if the player is in the scan radius. So for that we need private void update. And in here let's do check environment. Now let's declare the method check environment. So private void check environment. And for this we need to define what is the player. So we will do that with a layer mask. So back to the top here, serialize field, private layer mask layers. Now to see if the player is in firing range, we will use the overlap circle method, which gives us all the colliders inside the area of a circle. So physics2d.overlap circle. And the center of the overlap will be transform.position. The radius will be scan radius. And the layers. Now let's go back to Unity, and we didn't actually add a collider to our player. So let's do that. I'm gonna add a box collider 2D. Now back to our code. Now the overlap circle method returns a collider 2D. So to hold that, let's do serialize field, private collider 2D, target. and target equals overlap circle. And to test this out, let's do a debug.log. Back to Unity. And if we hit play, okay, so we need to select the turret and on the layers, let's select the layers to player. And I actually made a mistake, target should not be serialized, but let's hit play. And as soon as the player enters the scan radius on the console, you will see player. So that works. Let's get back to our code and remove the serialized fit from the collider 2D. Now let's write the method to look at target. So private void look at target. Now for this, we first have to see if target is not null. So if target is in range. So let's do if target not equals null. And here we're gonna get into some maths, but even if you don't understand this, you can just copy and paste this and it should work fine. First we need to do vector2 direction equals target.transform.position minus transform.position. This is because in vector mathematics, direction from point A to point B is the position of B minus the position of A. Now we have the direction in vectors, but to convert that to Euler angles, let's do float angle equals mathf.a tan2 direction.y direction.x. However, this is in radians, so to convert that to degrees, we will multiply this by mathf dot rad to deg. And now transform the rotation equals quaternion.angle axis angle, vector 3.forward. So vector 3.forward is basically the z-axis, so this will rotate the game object angle amount around the z-axis. Now let's test this out. Okay, I forgot to call the method in update, so let's do that. Look at target. Now let's go back to Unity and test this out. And right away we have a problem. So the chart looks 90 degrees away from the player. And this can be fixed by adding an offset. So let's go back to our code. And if you have this problem, what you can do is try adding and subtracting 90. So for my case, I need to subtract 90 from this. And so let's go back to Unity and hit play. And it works perfectly. The turret looks at the player. Now let's make our fireball. I'm going to drag and drop the fireball sprite. And right away you can see this is too big. To make this small, I'm going to click on the fireball sprite on the project view. And here you can see pixel per unit. The sprite will get smaller as you make this bigger. So I'm gonna set this to something like 500 and hit apply. And I'm gonna rename this to Fireball. Now let's make it a child of the turret. And I will rotate this 90 degrees around the Z-axis and position it where you want it to fire from. Now to define where we will fire from, let's add an empty game object and call it FirePoint. Drag and drop it on the turret to make it a child of the turret. And click on the fireball, and on the right side of the transform, click on the three dots, then copy component, then click on the fire point and paste component values. Alright, so let's now click on our fireball and add a new script. I'm gonna call this fireball and open it up in Visual Studio. Actually, let's go back to Unity. And let's add a rigid body 2D to our fireball. Make sure gravity scale is set to 0. Let's also add a circle collider 2D. Click on the edit button and adjust the circle collider. And tick the is trigger box. Now let's go back to Unity, to our fireball script. And in here we need to get the rigid body, so private rigid body 2D RB. And inside private start, RB equals get component rigid body. Now inside update we want to move the fireball, so rb.move position. We also need a speed, so let's do serialize field, private float speed. And in here, let's do vector 3.right into speed into time.delta time. Now we did vector 3.right instead of vector 3.up because if we go back to Unity, as you can see my fireball sprite is facing the right direction instead of up. So if your fireball sprite is facing up, then you want to use vector 3.up instead. However, this is in world position, so the fireball is always going to go to the world's right, regardless of which direction the fireball is facing. So for it to go to its own right, we want to put all of this inside transform.transform point. This will convert the right of the game object to world space. To learn more about local and global space, watch my other video linked in the description. Now let's go back to Unity and test this out. And it works. So let's go back to our code and let's go back to Turret AI. We're going to create a method called fire. Actually, before that, let's go back to Unity and let's drag and drop our fireball from the hierarchy view to the project view. So our fireball is now a prefab. Now delete the original. And in our third AI script, let's make a variable for the fireball and one for the firepoint. So serialize field, private game object fireball. And serialize field, private transform firepoint. Now let's do private void fire. Now we only want to fire if the target is in range. So again, if target not equals null, and in here let's do instantiate fireball firepoint.position firepoint.rotation. Now we also need a firing rate, so serialize field, private float fire delay. I'm gonna set this by default to 1. And this is just going to be the time in seconds between each time our turret fires. So we have a fire method to call this. First we want to do private void start. And in here, let's do invoke repeating. Fire. Zero. And fire delay. So let's go back to Unity. Select the turret. And let's drag and drop the fireball and the firepoint. Now if we hit play, so it works, awesome. But the fireballs stay on the scene, so eventually there will be too many fireballs and they will take up too much memory space, so we want them to go away after a specific amount of time. And to do that, let's go back to our fireball script. And in here, let's do serialize field, private float lifetime. I'm gonna set this by default to 10. And this is the lifetime of each fireball in seconds. So in void update, let's do lifetime minus equals time.delta time. And if lifetime less than 0. Destroy game object. So it works perfectly and our turret is done. Now to test this out, I'm gonna write a health script for our player. I'm gonna call it health. And I will move all the scripts to a folder. and open up health in Visual Studio. So here let's define the current health. So I'm just gonna do serialized field private float health equals 10 by default. And let's do public void take damage. And this method is going to take one argument, which is float damage. And in here, health minus equals damage. And if health less than 0.01, destroy game object. Now let's also add a debug.log here. Now let's go back to our fireball script. And to check if our fireball has collided with anything, we're gonna do on trigger enter 2D. And in here we wanna see if the object we collided with actually has a health script. So let's do health target health. Equals collision dot get component health. And if target health not equals null. Target health dot take damage. And I'm just gonna put 5 in here. And let's go back to Unity. As you can see, it works. The turret looks at our player and fires a fireball. And our player disappears when health reaches 0. So that's all I have for you today. Like if you liked the video, and thank you for watching.